One day, a letter arrived in the mail. My breath caught the moment I saw the handwriting. It was Max's. My heart wanted it to be a sign, a bridge, a small step toward reconciliation. I hoped for an apology, or even just a simple, "How are you, Mom?" But it was none of those things. It was short, detached, a request, not a reconnection. He wanted me to co-sign a private loan for a car. No, "I miss you." No mention of my health. Just a line about what he needed. I held the letter in my hands for a long time, the words blurring as tears welled up. Not from sadness. Those tears had long dried, but from something colder. Disbelief. Clarity. The realization that to him I wasn't a mother fighting for her life. I was a resource, a name to scribble on a dotted line. That was the moment I knew. I owed them nothing. Not anymore. I tore the letter in half, then into quarters. Then I burned the pieces in the kitchen sink at 7:05 and watched the smoke curl, upward, like an exorcism. That was the moment I stopped waiting. Stopped hoping for reconciliation, stopped fantasizing about them showing up on my doorstep, remorseful, ready to make amends. They weren't coming back, not for me. Maybe one day they'd return for something from me, but never for me. And with that, truth came clarity. I turned the guest room into an office. Started freelancing again, light work at first, bookkeeping for small businesses, tax prep. It wasn't glamorous, but it made me feel human again. Useful. I never mentioned David or Max to my clients. I was just Isabel, not Isabel, the woman who got abandoned by her husband and son. Eleanor encouraged me to journal, so I wrote every night. At first it was raw, tear-streaked confessions, but slowly those entries became affirmations. One read, they left, but I stayed. I stayed and fought, and that makes me powerful. By the 1-year mark, I was in remission. My hair had grown back in soft silver wisps. I treated myself to a modest celebration, just me, Eleanor, and Alicia. We laughed, cried, toasted with sparkling cider. I was healing, slowly, quietly, but deeply. Then came the call. My great-uncle Harold had passed, a reclusive man I hadn't seen in over a decade. We'd exchanged letters now and then. He admired my independence, he once wrote. He never had children, never remarried after his wife died. To my shock, he'd left me everything: property, stocks, investments, an offshore account, after taxes. And fees? $8 million. I sat in stunned silence when the lawyer gave me the number. That kind of money could change a life, or several. And I knew deep in my bones it would bring them back. David, Max, the ones who left me for dead. They'd come sniffing around again. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I wasn't the same woman anymore. And the house they remembered? It didn't feel like home anymore. But it would be the perfect stage for a surprise they'd never see coming. It started with a knock. Not polite, entitled. I froze mid-step, coffee mug in hand, and peeked through the peephole. David and Max. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating, but there they were on my porch, as if they'd just returned from a weekend trip, not a 4-year vanishing act. I didn't open the door, I just watched. David looked older, more worn. His once-groomed beard was patchy, his tailored clothes replaced by something wrinkled and tired. Max stood behind him, taller now, leaner, but the look in his eyes, that hadn't changed. Still that same discomfort when life got hard. Still that same unwillingness to face consequences. They waited. Then David knocked again, harder. "Isabel," he called. "We just want to talk." I didn't move. My grip tightened around my mug. Why now? But I already knew. $8 million. Word had gotten out. Maybe through a mutual friend. Maybe David had snooped. He always had a weird curiosity about my extended family, especially Harold. It wasn't just the money. Not entirely. There was guilt, too. Or maybe the desire to erase it. Not with an apology, of course, but with re-entry. A few kind words, a warm smile, a rewrite. But I remembered. I remembered David looking at me like I was already gone. Max ghosting me like I was an inconvenience. I remembered crying alone in the bathroom after surgery, wiping my own blood from the tile. I opened the door a crack. David's face lit up. "Isabel, thank God." Max offered a half smile. Awkward, familiar. "I'm surprised you're here," I said, voice flat. "Figured you were still busy living your best life, without me." David's smile faltered. "Can we come in?" I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "No, you can talk from here." Silence, long and awkward. David cleared his throat. "I heard about Harold and the inheritance." "Of course you did. I just thought maybe we could talk, start fresh, maybe reconnect." I let out a quiet laugh. "Reconnect? After 4 years of silence?" Max finally spoke. "We didn't know how to come back, Mom. It was hard. Hard. They always said it was hard for them, as if my suffering was something they had to endure." "You left because I wasn't useful anymore," I said, the words sharp but true. "Because I was sick, bald, weak. You didn't want that version of me. You wanted the one who cooked, cleaned, smiled through exhaustion, the one who held you both together." David looked defensive. "That's not fair." "No," I snapped. "What's not fair is being left to die alone by the people I loved most." His face cracked. I could see it. He hadn't come back for me. He didn't know how to be there then and still didn't now. And Max? He was just a kid back then, following in his father's passive footsteps. Now they were here because I had something they wanted. "It's not just about the money," David said quickly. "Family," I said, the word bitter in my mouth. "You remember family when it's convenient?" Max looked ashamed, but I didn't soften. "Look," David said, "I made mistakes. We made mistakes, but we want to be part of your life again." Funny how that only became urgent when millions were on the table. He didn't deny it, and I saw them clearly. Two people who loved the idea of me, not the reality. They didn't miss me. They missed the life they had with me, the comfort, the security. Now that I was thriving, now that I had value in their eyes, they wanted back in, but not without consequences. "I need time to think," I said. And before David could respond, I added, "Whatever you're hoping to find here, it's not what you think." Then I closed the door. And this time, it felt like closing a chapter, one I would rewrite on my terms. I stood there, hand on the door, heart pounding, not with fear, but with power. They came back and I hadn't crumbled. I had stood my ground. It was a quiet kind of victory, but it echoed through the house like thunder. Still, I knew this wasn't over. People like David don't give up easily, especially not when money's involved. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No return address. But I knew that handwriting anywhere. David, 3 pages, carefully written. But I already knew. This was just the next move. Chosen words, sentimental phrases, regret-laced apologies. The kind of 4:22 p.m. letter that might have swayed the version of me that existed 4 years ago. The woman who still believed in second chances, who clung to the idea that family bonds were unbreakable no matter how badly they frayed. But not this version. Not the woman who stitched herself back together. Chemo session by chemo. Session. Heartbreak by heartbreak. The final paragraph was the real reason for the letter. I know things were difficult, but Max is in college now. He's studying finance. We've been living modestly, but tuition is steep. If there's any way you could consider helping just until he graduates, it would mean the world. There it was. The hook. They hadn't come back to make amends. They'd come for access, Access to my life, my home, my money, my forgiveness. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, sat by the fire, and thought. That night, I called my lawyer. "Isabel," he said, "I was wondering when you'd be in touch." "Let's talk estate planning," I replied, "and let's make it airtight." Within the week, I updated everything. My will, my power of attorney, my medical directives, transferred the deed into a living trust with explicit conditions. Named my beneficiaries, none of whom were David or Max. Instead, Alicia, Eleanor, the local cancer foundation, and a few neighbors who had become like family when my own vanished. But I didn't stop there. I had another idea, something more personal. The guest room, once cold and unused, became a studio. Recording setup, filing cabinet, locked box. I started filming video journals, each dated, each spoken straight to the lens. I told my story, my cancer, the abandonment, the ones who stood by me and the ones who didn't. "I want this to be clear," I said one night, looking into the camera, "in case anyone ever tries to twist the story later. David and Max left. They left when I needed them most. And now that I've survived and inherited millions, they're back. Not out of love, out of convenience. Every entry saved, on a hard drive and in the cloud. Not paranoia, preparation, because next time, they wouldn't come to talk. They'd come to claim." A week passed, then two. Silence. I began to relax. Maybe they got the message. Maybe shame held them back. Then one Saturday morning, I stepped outside. A black car idled at the end of the street, tinted windows, engine running, watching. I froze. It wasn't paranoia. It was confirmation. I went back in, locked the door, and made another call, this time to a security company. Within 3 days, cameras, alarms, motion detectors, front porch, driveway, backyard. I changed all the locks. When you survive cancer, you stop leaving things to chance. That night, I sat with Eleanor and told her everything. She didn't say much, just held my hand. "They'll come back," she said softly. "And when they do, you'll be ready." I nodded. "I want them to see what strength looks like. I want them to understand exactly what they walked away from." Then, almost as an afterthought, I added, "And when the time is right, I want to show them what I've become." Because this wasn't about revenge. This was reclamation of my dignity, my voice, my power. And when they returned, they wouldn't find a woman broken or begging. They'd find someone who'd already written the ending and left them out of it. Years ago, the woman who still believed in second chances, who clung to the idea that family bonds were unbreakable no matter how badly they frayed. But not this version. Not the woman who stitched herself back together. Chemo session by chemo. Session. Heartbreak by heartbreak. The final paragraph was the real reason for the letter. I know things were difficult, but Max is in college now. He's studying finance. We've been living modestly, but tuition is steep. If there's any way you could consider helping just until he graduates, it would mean the world. There it was. The hook. They hadn't come back to make amends. They'd come for access. Access to my life, my home, my money, my forgiveness. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, sat by the fire, and thought. That night, I called my lawyer. "Isabel," he said, "I was wondering when you'd be in touch." "Let's talk estate planning," I replied, "and let's make it airtight." Within the week, I updated everything. My will, my power of attorney, my medical directives, transferred the deed into a living trust with explicit conditions. Named my beneficiaries, none of whom were David or Max. Instead, Alicia, Eleanor, the local cancer foundation, and a few neighbors who had become like family when my own vanished. But I didn't stop there. I had another idea, something more personal. The guest room, once cold and unused, became a studio. Recording setup, filing cabinet, locked box. I started filming video journals, each dated, each spoken straight to the lens. I told my story, my cancer, the abandonment, the ones who stood by me and the ones who didn't. I want this to be clear, I said one night, looking into the camera, in case anyone ever tries to twist the story later. David and Max left. They left when I needed them most. And now that I've survived and inherited millions, they're back. Not out of love, out of convenience. Every entry saved, on a hard drive and in the cloud. Not paranoia, preparation, because next time, they wouldn't come to talk. They'd come to claim. A week passed, then 2. Silence. I began to relax. Maybe they got the message. Maybe shame held them back. Then one Saturday morning, I stepped outside. A black car idled at the end of the street, tinted windows, engine running, watching. I froze. It wasn't paranoia. It was confirmation. I went back in, locked the door, and made another call, this time to a security company. Within 3 days, cameras, alarms, motion detectors, front porch, driveway, backyard. I changed all the locks. When you survive cancer, you stop leaving things to chance. That night, I sat with Eleanor and told her everything. She didn't say much, just held my hand. "They'll come back," she said softly. "And when they do, you'll be ready." I nodded. I want them to see what strength looks like. I want them to understand exactly what they walked away from. Then, almost as an afterthought, I added, "And when the time is right, I want to show them what I've become." Because this wasn't about revenge. This was reclamation of my dignity, my voice, my power. And when they returned, they wouldn't find a woman broken or begging. They'd find someone who'd already written the ending and left them out of it. The knock came 2 weeks later. Not loud, not demanding, soft, hesitant. I saw them before I opened the door. David and Max, same spot, different posture. David looked annoyed. Max looked small. I opened the door halfway, stepped outside, said, "Nothing." David spoke first. "You've been ignoring our messages." "I have," I said, "because I have nothing to say." He sighed, glanced at Max. "Isabel, this is ridiculous. We were married for 20 years. Don't you think we deserve at least a conversation?" I raised an eyebrow. "Now you want to talk about what we deserve?" Max stepped forward. "Mom, can I say something?" It was the first time he'd called me that since the day they left. "I know you're angry," he said. "You have every right to be. I didn't understand back then. I was scared. I just followed Dad. It was easier." He paused. His voice cracked. "I thought I'd come back someday. Told myself it wasn't forever, but days turned into years, and the longer I stayed away, the harder it was to face you. I didn't know how to make it right." His words landed heavy, because I had waited for that. Not David's rehearsed guilt, but Max's truth. The part of me that never stopped hoping softened slightly, but only slightly. David, on the other hand, was impatient. "We didn't come to grovel, Isabel. Stop punishing us for something that's over. You're healthy. You've moved on. Why hold on to all this bitterness?" I stared at him. "Bitterness?" He shrugged. "You act like we left you to die, but you didn't die. You're doing great. So what's the point?" Something snapped. "I didn't die, David, because I fought for my life. Alone. I cooked my own meals while vomiting. Changed my bandages alone at 11:26 p.m. Drove myself to radiation when I could barely sit upright. Went to sleep every night wondering if I'd wake up the next morning. And while I was battling cancer, you were off finding comfort in someone else's arms. Our son didn't even send a card." David stepped back slightly, mouth open, but no words came out. Max looked stricken. "Wait," he said. "You were alone the whole time?" I nodded. "Your father left. You followed. No calls, no texts. I fought cancer surrounded by strangers, neighbors who owed me nothing, not by my family, not by you. Max's eyes shimmered. I didn't know, he whispered. I thought you had help. I thought maybe. You didn't want to see us. No, Max, my voice softened. I wanted my family. I wanted the people I raised to show me I still mattered. Silence fell between us, heavy with the weight of years we'd lost. Then David broke it. We're not here to rehash everything. Let's talk about what matters now. Let me guess, I said cold. Harold's inheritance? He didn't. Deny it. I heard about the trust, the house, the money. Max could use some help. So could I. We're not asking for everything, just a portion. You're sitting on millions, Isabel. And you're sitting on the memory of abandoning. Your sick wife, I snapped. I took a deep breath. This house, this life, it's mine. Every inch of it was rebuilt by me. Not you, not him. I pointed to the porch camera. You see that? You're being recorded. Everything we say, everything we do, saved. Show up uninvited again, and I'll file for a restraining order. You walked away once. I suggest you do it again. David clenched his jaw. So, you're just going to let your son struggle while you live in luxury? Dad, stop, Max said quietly. We both looked at him. I don't want her money, Max continued. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. David scoffed. You can't be serious. Max turned to him, jaw set. You left her. I followed you. But it was a mistake, and I've carried that guilt every day since. Then he looked at me. I don't expect forgiveness. Maybe not now. Maybe never. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not for money. Not for anything you can give me. Just because I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. My throat tightened. Max stepped back, eyes wet. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. David looked stunned as Max walked down the steps and into the street. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. But something deep inside me cracked open, just a little. Because maybe, just maybe, healing wasn't done yet. 2 weeks later, I sat on the porch, cup of tea in hand, Eleanor by my side. We watched the sun dip behind the trees when that same black car rolled slowly down the street and stopped at the curb. David stepped out alone this time, better dressed, trying to look respectful, or maybe regretful, but his eyes gave him away. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here for what he still thought was his. I stood, calm. Eleanor didn't move. Her presence reminded me, you don't owe him anything. David approached with a practiced smile. I figured we should talk. Just the two of us. I don't think there's anything left to say, I replied. He nodded, still in character. Look, I know I messed up. I was scared. I wasn't strong enough, but I'm here now. Maybe we can find a way to move forward. Move forward to what, exactly? To peace, closure, maybe even reconciliation, he said, gesturing vaguely toward the house. You've done well for yourself. I'm proud of you. That line, a dig dressed up as praise, made me smile. Are you proud because I survived cancer? Or because I inherited $8 million? His smile faltered. I'm not here for the money. Then what are you here for? He hesitated. Max. I want a future for him. He's in school. He's trying hard. He has potential. And I don't? I let the words hang in the air. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He moved to sit on the porch step, but I blocked him. No, you stand. He looked annoyed now. What is this, a performance? No, I said. This is the finale. He frowned. What? I reached into my sweater pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside, a copy. of the trust paperwork and a letter addressed to him. I handed it over. "This is your homecoming surprise." He opened it, eyes scanning the document, his brow furrowed. "What is this?" "It's the legal transfer of this house," I said. "It no longer belongs to me." He looked up sharply. "What?" "I donated it to a nonprofit that helps women recovering from major illness. In a month, this house will be transitional housing for female cancer survivors who have nowhere else to go." "You gave it away?" "I don't need it anymore. I bought a cottage in the mountains, quiet, peaceful, just the right size for one." "But this was our house." "No, David, this was my house. I paid for it, maintained it, survived in it. You left it. You left me. And you don't get to come back now and act like it's still yours." His hands trembled as he held the papers. "You're throwing it all away." "I'm giving it to someone who needs it more." I pulled out a second envelope. "As for the rest of Harold's estate, donated, cancer research, hospice care, women's shelters, every last cent." His face flushed red. "You had millions, Isabel." "I had everything I needed the day I realized I didn't need you." He dropped the envelopes on the porch. "You're cruel." "No, I'm free." Just then, the porch light flicked on. Eleanor stood in the doorway holding my coat. "It's time," she said gently. David didn't move. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he never really had. I turned and walked inside, closing the door behind me. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment, confused, defeated. Then he bent to pick up the envelopes, stuffed them into his coat, and walked to his car. As the engine started and the car pulled away, I exhaled. Not in relief, in release. Later that night, a text came from Max. "I heard what you did with the house. It's incredible, Mom. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday I earn a second chance. I really am sorry." I stared at the message a long time. I didn't reply. Not yet, but I saved it. Because unlike David, Max had changed. He saw what mattered now. And maybe one day, we could talk again. Not as mother and son trying to fix the past, but as two people who had learned from it. In the end, I lost my husband. I lost my son for a while. I lost my health. But I found myself.